have an early remembrance of COLIN from my reporter days. I wanted to do a story about this 2005 study done in Trinidad, risk behaviors for HIV among men who have sex with men in TNT. And it found that the HIV prevalence among this group was 20%. They had a sample of about 235. And Colin said to me then, he knew, he warned me, this is not really useful. This kind of story doesn't work. And that was my first early experience of figuring out, okay, how do you communicate to people that men who have sex with men in particular communities have special needs when it comes to HIV prevention, treatment, care, human rights. As I've crossed the barrier over into a communications portfolio at UNAIDS, where that kind of work is very central to us, removing punitive laws that hinder the HIV response, eliminating stigma and discrimination, we are now faced with some of those same challenges that I experienced as a reporter. How do you communicate with people, policymakers, but also your general population? How do you change minds and hearts, attitudes, cultural norms? It's kind of like these huge tasks that are medium to long term. And we've been wrangling with the communication around that. People are not going to read your long reports. People are not going to read your long articles. So how do you produce things that engage people, get them talking, get them thinking and questioning their own preconceived notions, their own prejudices? The other challenge that we've had at UNAIDS is, how do we provide the evidence for the arguments that we're making? We know that that data about HIV prevalence among men who have sex with men is reported in a particular way, and it's also received in a particular way that reinforces people's prejudices. So you think you're making a great point about the need to provide targeted prevention programs for a particular group of people, but people just say, oh my God, so much HIV among that group, they're diseased, they're pariahs. That is how people receive those messages. So we've been working through how do we bolster our evidence and come up with data that can help us engage people on these issues. And I want to share with you one of our projects, CARIMES, Caribbean Men's Internet Survey.
What's it like to be a man? Wait, let's back up a second and start from the beginning. Humans are social creatures. People are attracted to other people. They want to be around them, to make connections, share special moments, find companionship, and, well, have sex. But sexuality is complex. What determines who's attracted to who? And how different are people depending on who they're attracted to? Sure, men are often attracted to women, but not all the time. So then, what's it like to be a man that's attracted to men? CARIMES asked that question online, and more than 3,500 men in the Caribbean answered. They come from 33 countries and territories. They have many different races and religions. They speak different languages. Half of them have at least a secondary education. Another 47% are university graduates. They don't speak for all men who have sex with men in the Caribbean, but what they have to say is important. As it turns out, in many respects, their perspectives really aren't that unique. Many of them desire relationships, long for an emotional connection, and want to be free from social and mental barriers. There's much more about CARIMES to learn and discuss. Check out the other videos and join the conversation.
So that's a quick snapshot of CARIMES. Basically, it was an online study of men who have sex with men in the English, French, Spanish, Dutch-speaking Caribbean. So we placed ads on male hookup sites like Adam for Adam, Manhunt. We did some Facebook ads. We also put some stuff in the mainstream media to drive people to participate in the survey. The sample that we got for Trinidad and Tobago was 471, an even larger sample than your traditional face-to-face survey. And the thing about using the online approach to gathering this data is that you get people that you don't ordinarily get with your traditional methods. As you can see, the proportion of men who have a university education was really high. Also what you get is people who don't identify as gay or homosexual. So we got people who identified as bi, we got people who said, I don't even want to put a label to myself and to what I do. I'll give you some of the numbers for Trinidad. 58% said they were comfortable calling themselves gay or homosexual. 19% identified as bi. 3% said they were straight, although some of them had sex with men, but they called themselves straight. 18% said they didn't want to use a term, and 2% said they had some other term, whatever that might be. The idea is that by using an online approach, we were able to get some insight into the lived experiences of people that we don't ordinarily hear from, people that are not going to be recruited by your civil society organizations. And we were able to find out not just about condoms and lubricants and how many people you have sex with. We did get that. And that information is useful, of course, for people who are involved in HIV programming. And we're going to go on a country-by-country basis to have stakeholders sit down and suss out and see what's the data for our country, what do we need to work on, what are some of the needs, what are some of the research gaps, and how could we respond more meaningfully to the situation of the different groups of men who have sex with men within our own country. But the other thing we got beyond all of the biomedical stuff, which is very exciting for us, is some insight into what men go through on a day-to-day basis. What's their lived experience? And this is of value not just for people who are interested in HIV and sexual reproductive health, but also for the general population. And our challenge now is to figure out how do we use this data to engage Caribbean societies, and in this case, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, on some of their cultural norms, on the violence that men who have sex with men experience. And I'll share some of those numbers with you as well. 68% said that they were stared at or intimidated. 69% said they were verbally assaulted. 11% had been punched or beaten at some point in their lives. So those are really high numbers. The other interesting thing that we found out is that there's a pro and a con to being out in the Caribbean, and this was seen throughout the region. So if you are a man who has sex with men, and you could pass for straight, and you decided that you didn't want to be out, the advantage of that was that you didn't experience as much abuse. However, those men who were out tended to have better health-seeking behavior overall. So you choose to stay in the closet, you protect yourself from being insulted, being assaulted. But when you came out, these were some of the things that you experienced. So these are the numbers for Trinidad. And as you can see, people were most out with their friends, 19 and 16. People were least out with the folks that they meet at school, which I guess is kind of indicative of being young and beginning to figure things out and being very afraid. So our challenge, and we're very excited to have the opportunity to get your feedback, is how do we then use this data to have a conversation with Caribbean people? One of the ideas that we came up with was to do this Santana video. You all know Santana? Okay, so it's these very crass videos, usually about sex and horning. And we decided to commission him to produce a video. He produced a script. We consulted civil society organizations, and the idea was to talk about some of the verbal abuse that is very run-of-the-mill for life in Trinidad and Tobago and the rest of the Caribbean, and also to talk about the issue of family acceptance. When you have a gay relative, are they accepted? Are they kept a secret? Are they defended? All of those things. And what we did was have the producer put a link for a SurveyMonkey poll so that people could answer a few questions to get them thinking about, some of the themes and to get an idea. And I pulled out 2 of the results. Do you think Santana was right to accept his gay brother? And about 7% of people said no, and same 7% of people said they are not sure. Similarly, would you lie with a gay person? 15% equally said no, and 15% were ambivalent on it. They're not sure. And those we found were some of the areas where people are still working through how do I feel about this issue? And it's useful to not put the UNAIDS branding on it, not make them feel as though there's an agenda here from an international organization, because in our experience, otherwise they don't listen, they don't pay attention. And to engage and think and participate with something that is basically fun, but gets them thinking and questioning their own ideas. And very quickly, I also wanted to mention some polls that we've done, public opinion polls in several countries, including Trinidad. This is some of the data for Trinidad. Very significant. 78% of our respondents said they don't think homosexuals, they don't think people should be treated differently on the basis of sexual orientation. 64% acknowledged that violence against gays is a form of discrimination. And very significantly, 56%, over half of us, either accept or tolerate homosexuals. And we thought that these were promising numbers, something to get people thinking, to get them questioning the conventional wisdom, the loudest voices about what Trinidadians and Tobagonians think about these issues. In fact, it may be that we're more tolerant than we give ourselves credit for. So the idea is that we're doing some infographics, sharing them online, and getting people, without having to go through a long, boring report, to get a snapshot that makes them say, oh, is that where our country is at? Okay, well, what do I think about these issues? And I'll share just one more. 56% of respondents said that the immigration law should not bar entry on the basis of sexual orientation. So over half of the people in Trinidad and Tobago have a very progressive take on what our immigration laws should be. And the idea is to use our online spaces to get the average person to interrogate it, to think about what their position is, and to think what the views are of the people around them on these issues.